I think my story is going to be interesting to your listeners because I've got an interesting sort of merger of the CPA world and the technology world is kind of where I came from. And so I started my career, got a degree in accounting back in the days when you only had to have a bachelor's degree.
Hi, Dave. Thank you for being on my podcast today.
Awesome. It's great to be here. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much. We have Dave as a partner in charge at Anders CPAs and Advisors. So, Dave, before we start this podcast interview, can you introduce a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I think my story is going to be interesting to your listeners because I've got an interesting sort of merger of the CPA world and the technology world is kind of where I came from. And so I started my career, got a degree in accounting back in the days when you only had to have a bachelor's degree. You could take the exam with 120 hours. So did that and then passed the CPA exam, started at Ernst & Young, started in audit, and then I went into IT audit, and then I shifted to consulting. And then I pivoted and I left and I went to a startup. And we got caught in the dot-com crash. And but learned a lot. And then I went back and joined Arthur Andersen. And so I was with Andersen leading their local technology risk consulting practice. And so did that for a while. But if you know your accounting history, bad things happened to Andersen, and we can get into that if you want to. But then there was some good that came from that. Coming out of that, there was a group of us, 1,000, 1,500 people that together went to form Protiviti. And so I was with Protiviti for 7 years, and then I got the opportunity to go onto the technology world. And so I left and went and led technology for a public company for 6 years, which was a fantastic experience. And then I came back and started doing some virtual CIO work at a public accounting firm. And then about 6 years ago, I got an opportunity to come to the firm I'm at today, which is Anders, and phenomenal opportunity to lead and grow the advisory practice for the firm. And as part of that, kind of every step I made along the way is relevant in the role that I play today. So it's one of those things, you never know why life does things to you and why, certain things happen. But at the end of the day, you just have to have faith that there's a plan and we just don't know it and understand it. And so I think that's where I'm at today in a great role leading the advisory practice at Anders today.
You have an amazing career path that we can ask so many questions and then we can learn so much from your journey. But let's start from very beginning when you started in college. Why did you go with accounting major and not with any other majors?
Okay. So I originally wasn't an accounting major. I actually thought that I wanted to be a pilot. And so I like going the whole aeronautical route. And then somebody told me, well, to be to reach the top of the profession, you have to have perfect vision. And I don't have perfect vision. So I was like, well, I don't want to go into a profession that I can't be all I can be in that profession. So then I thought, I'm kind of good with math. I thought I would do engineering. So I tried engineering and then I was like, nope, this is not for me. And then I had a very wise friend. I was trying to figure out what to do. And I had a very wise friend of mine that said, you need to study accounting because you will always have a job if you're an accountant or a CPA. And it's the language of business. You need to study accounting, but you don't have to be an accountant. And it's like that's a core skill set that you need. And then you can take that and go wherever you want to. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to, do whatever, you can go and do that. So I changed my field of study to accounting. And certainly there were bumps along the way. When you get to your third year in your accounting studies, you take some pretty hard classes. And there were 2 intermediate accounting classes that almost broke me. And I almost didn't pursue almost gave up at that point. But I made it through those, had a great experience. After 4 years, was able to take the CPA exam, pass it on the first try. This is back in the day where you took all 4 parts at the same time. So for 2.5 days, I went to Springfield, Illinois, since I was in Illinois. And with thousands of other people at the same time, you took the CPA exam. And so got through that and then was able to start my career. So that's a little bit about sort of accounting in college and how I got there.
I like how you mentioned about the third and fourth year in college when you start picking up difficult major. Because I think I was struggling so much with audit subject. I had no clues about like what does this mean? What are they testing? Like all the testing, all the audit exams, and I was like, this is so crazy. Should I still stay in accounting or not? And funny enough, that I struggled with audit class, I struggled with audit exams, and then I still decided that I'm going to do audit for my career, and that was a mistake. So everyone, if you find struggling with something in the class, maybe it's something that you want to try something else if it's not something that you feel like you are in the right path. But after you graduate, you got a CPA license and you start your career at EY for 9 years. Can
Correct.
you share your experience at EY for those 9 years?
Yeah. And we can talk a little bit about audit because personally, I believe if you're in high school or college or a young professional, I think there's no better place to start your career if you want to be in business than audit. Doing external audit at a public accounting firm is tremendous because every couple of weeks you're with a different team. So every audit that you're on will be with a different team, and then you're at a different client. And so 1 week you're at a bank or a financial services company. 3 weeks later, you're at a manufacturing facility. And so you get exposed to so many people on the team, on different teams, and then also so many different types of businesses. And even in those first couple of years, it was amazing how much I learned with, wow, I really like this culture, but I don't like this. And so as part of that, that's why I'm a huge believer in internships, because I think it's so valuable to try something and see if you like it or not. Because your career is going to be long and you're going to have a lot of different opportunities to go different directions. So if you're not where you feel like you need to be today, then try something different. And that's actually what I did. So I went into Ernst & Young, great firm, had a phenomenal experience. First, probably 3 years, I just did financial statement audits. And so I did that. And then when I was in college, I worked for IBM and I was always interested in technology. And so I transitioned over to do technology audits for Ernst & Young. And so I did that for another 3 years or so. And then after that, I decided I want to try this consulting thing. And so I transitioned over to consulting. And so for the last 3 or 4 years that I was at EY, I was in the consulting practice. And I think that's one of the great things about accounting, which is you can go a lot of different directions. It used to just be, do you want to do audit or tax? And now there are so many more options. There's so many different flavors of things that you can get into. And as I mentioned earlier, if you study accounting, you don't have to be an accountant. So you can actually take that skill set and take it elsewhere. So yeah, had a great experience at Ernst & Young, great firm, and I learned a ton. And I think that sort of I think that's what put me on a path for success, is getting exposed to so many things. The other thing I would say is I also learned how to be a professional at Ernst & Young. And when you're around people, and we can talk remote versus in person, and we can get into that later. But I think one of the things, just, really being around people and learning, because I came from a small, this may resonate with some of your listeners. I came from a small town and I moved 2 hours to the big city. I moved to St. Louis. And when I did that, I really didn't have a support system. I didn't even really know what public accounting was. So I got this opportunity. And by being around other people that cared about me and invested in me, they taught me a ton. And so early in your career, I think it's important. Sure, technical skills are great, but I think just to know when you go to lunch with somebody, what do you do? When something happens in the office, how do you deal with it? Like, all of those lessons I learned early in my career. And I think they set me up for success. And then now today, I try to give back. And as I work with people, to try to help them sort of learn how to be a professional early in your career. Because wherever you go, that's going to be a key kind of core set of skills that you need to have.
That's so true. I think one of my partners shared with me that if you are in the office, you can learn so much from the conversations, what people are talking about, what people discuss about. Maybe you learn about what they talk about, the tax regulation, you learn about the audit code that they talk about, that they need to figure out how to deal with it with the client. So now you mentioned about in the remote working environment, how can you bring that learning experience from office to the remote situation?
It is more challenging because you're right in an office environment. And that's how I learned. I listened to partners on phone calls, how they talk to clients, how they describe things, how they listened, like all of those things were, really valuable for me. And in a remote environment, that is hard to get. So you have to be intentional. So if you're looking for a remote position, you have to find an organization that really understands that and has some things in place to make you successful. Because if you're starting your career and you're a remote employee, the last thing you want to do is work, let's say you work 40 hours a week, spend 39 hours just working on your own using your technical skills and having only 1 hour of interaction. And so if there's a way, who are the people on your team? Schedule meetings, have a 10-minute check-in with people where you're just reaching out and connecting with people, finding out what they're doing, what's going on with them. Because the other thing is remote work can be really lonely. And if you're alone and by yourself, you need that. So one example of one of the things we do at Anders is every Monday morning. So the start of every week, our virtual CFO practice, which for us is about 60 people, every Monday we have a half-hour meeting where everybody joins the same meeting. And the meeting, we do some announcements and those types of things, but there's always a topic of the week where somebody comes up with a topic, which could be, which superhero is your favorite superhero? Or, what are you doing for this upcoming holiday? And then there's another person that has the joke of the week. And so so there's different jokes that are told. So it's not so much about, it's about communication and bonding and relationships. And then we also do in-person retreats where every 6 months we get all of our remote employees, we get the whole team together. And that's super important. So you want to make sure that if you go into a remote position, since you're not going to have the benefit of that in-office interaction, how can you still get that and those learnings, which are super important as the foundation of your career in that environment? And so you want to make sure you find the employer that understands that remote work is very different than in-office work, and therefore, they're intentional about making sure that you do get those opportunities and you do get learnings. And if you are in a position where you do have the opportunity to go to an office, yeah, Rosie, I think you take advantage of it. Maybe you don't have to go in 5 days a week, but invest some time going into the office, learning from other people. Because that's one of the things that's most rewarding when I look back over a 3 decade plus career, is the relationships I have with people. It's funny, actually. Last night I was at an event, and somebody that I saw there was somebody that I started with at Ernst & Young over 3 decades ago. And those relationships that you form in college and as you start your career, those will stick with you for your entire career. So make those investments, spend the time, invest in others, because that's the other thing. As you grow in your career, you realize it's less about your individual technical skills and it's more about the effect you have on others and what you can accomplish as a team. And so those are some of the things about as it relates to some of the challenges of remote work.
I love it how you have the weekly meeting every Monday. So how many people attend that meeting?
All 60. Everybody's there every Monday morning, and we smile, we laugh, we catch up on people, find out, hey, somebody over the weekend did something, or somebody was going to run a marathon. Tell the group, how did it go? And so, sharing those experiences, or somebody got married, or somebody had a baby, or and we celebrate those things together, because so much of your working career is about relationships, and it is about being with others, and that's it's part of the human condition. And so we foster that, and we've come up with ways to intentionally cause that to happen. And then supplement that with the in-person retreats, and that's how you get the relationships that last a long time.
That's amazing. I just want to share my experience that the job I have right now is my first job. I have like 100% remote. And so, like, in the first week, I was so excited, like, yay, I don't have to go out and drive to work. I don't have to worry about working clothes, getting ready. It's just so quick. Get up, 5 minutes, boom, I'm in front of my desk and then start working. But and then after the first week, I start feeling like, oh my god, I feel so isolated. I feel like I'm missing something, because for me as an extrovert person, communicating with people is so essential for me, not just for my for my work, but also for my personal growth as well. So I was like, oh my god, how can I do this? I need to go somewhere else to figure out how can I just make up the missing part, because I love working remotely. It's so convenient,
Mhm.
super super convenient. And also one thing I want to add, that when I work in the office, my first week of the new job, I always walk around the office to say hi to people. But because my job is remotely 100% now, I actually sent a 10-minute meeting to some people and just go introduce myself for very first week, that I strongly recommend new staff, if you have a remote position, try to do that. People happy to like have you introduce yourself, because they like, oh, we have so many new people starting this month, but how many people reaching out to those new people? So it's better that you new people reaching out to the firm, reaching out to partners, managers, seniors, to just introduce yourself. That make my work so much easier when I actually work on the job a few weeks later. So
Yeah,
that
great. So that's great that you do that. The other thing that I would add is that whether intentional or not, that will make you stand out. One of the things that sort of remote work has gotten a bad work, and we're seeing, sort of there people are being forced to go back to the office, and remote work has become a bad thing or a bad word. And I think doing things like that clearly sends the message that, hey, just because I'm a remote employee does not mean I just want to sit here and not engage with anybody else. Or, you're showing through by being proactive and intentional about it, that, hey, I'm here, I care. It's the same as if I was in the office, and I'm gonna be a valuable contributor of the firm. And yeah, so that I think that's a great idea. Hopefully people heard that, and we'll take that, because that, once again, at these early stages in your career, it really sets the tone for what kind of professional you're going to be. So Rosie, I think that's a great example of something you can do if you're in a remote environment.
yes, check it out, because I was new. I had to figure it out by myself. And so I tried that way and it was amazing. People remember me, remember my name. And then they would say, oh, I have this job, Rosie, do you want to take this or not? So like I was new, but I already like my schedule like got full so quickly, because people like heard my name, even know like, oh, she's new, but she can do this, she can do that. So yeah, remote position is not easy. I have to admit that it's not easy, but it doesn't mean that it is impossible to make it become a good position for you for the career growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, back to your career path. That after you work at EY for about 9 years, and then you focus on the technology. You move out to, I would say, private. Do we call that private for about 7 years? Is that correct?
Yeah. So going to industry. All of my early positions for the first 15 years of my career were all public accounting types of consulting firms and those types of things. I think there's a great sort of learning here. So when you do that, you're an advisor. So you're helping another client, and you're trying to help them be successful. But you don't really know what it's like on the other side of the desk, because those first 15 years, I was always the advisor. I was never the person being advised. And so when I made that switch, I was basically on the other side of the desk. So suddenly I'm in an organization, and like I had advised people for a long time, but suddenly when you're in that role, you realize a lot of things that you don't fully appreciate when you're on the outside looking in. And so there's just dynamics of being internally within an organization. And then also you realize the value, what you want from your advisors. And, certain people that I had were more like partners, in terms of when they came in, they helped me solve problems. They helped me with solutions. And that was really valuable. So after I left that role, basically when I went back to being an advisor, I was a much better advisor, because I had been in that role, and I know how hard it is to affect change within an organization. I know what some of the obstacles are and issues that people that are inside companies deal with. So yeah, when I went from public accounting to industry, it was a great. I learned a ton. I really enjoyed it, and I think overall it made me a much better professional, especially when I came back to the consulting or the advisory side.
That's interesting. I go opposite way. I start in private first, and then I go to public. But you started in public and go to private. How did, but I want to go back a little bit before you actually go to private to industry. You did work at Arthur Anderson for 2 years.
Yes.
And that's, can you share your experience there and then when drama happens?
Yeah. There's lots of books written on this. So I was in the St. Louis office of Arthur Anderson. Anderson was a phenomenal firm. The people that I got to work with were phenomenal. And unfortunately, due to some, and so back in the day, it was the big eight. So there were eight major public accounting firms. That is now narrowed down to the big four. One of those was Arthur Anderson. So Anderson had been around forever, was a great firm, did very innovative things, but the firm got into trouble with a client called Enron out of Houston. And ultimately, what happened is that basically, through some legislative action, the firm was basically put out of business because we couldn't provide our services anymore. And so Anderson, this massive, incredible firm, basically disappeared overnight. And so that was tragic and unfortunate. Especially so now let's talk about the human part of that, which is so I had joined. I spent all those years at Ernst and Young, and then when I was at Arthur Anderson, I hadn't been there that long. But what happened when that those things go on, the partners basically had invested in the firm and their retirement was in the firm. So when the firm is no more, all of their retirement savings are gone. And so I witnessed some very difficult personal times for those people dealing with that because they some of them had spent 30, 35 years building Arthur Anderson into what it was and building their client base. And suddenly all their retirement savings were gone. And so it was a horribly tragic event. But one of the things I took away from it is a much better understanding of risk management and what can go wrong. What are the things that you need to think about? And then also just the value of relationships, because a lot of people at Anderson, because of the good work that they had done and the strong professionals that they were, they ended up in some amazing positions that have now, now 22 years later, basically they're on top of the world again because they were always a good professional, which I think is a good lesson for your listeners, which is sometimes bad things just happen. That wasn't part of the plan for, those things to happen. So much of life is about bad things are going to happen to you. The question is, how do you respond? And that was, I had a choice. And so I was fortunate that a group of us went and founded Protivity and we had great success there. And it was, great people, great success. And so, but that wasn't part of the plan. And so I think it's important to have a plan, but you have to understand that sometimes outside circumstances and timing matters more than your plan. So how you respond, how you navigate difficult times tells you a lot about your character and then ultimately determines, I think, a lot of your success in life.
Yeah, it tells you about your characters and also it shapes your character as well. Because talking about the plan and timing, I love planning. I want to like, okay, this year, I get this. I'm going to achieve this, and then all of a sudden, last year, at the end around November, December, my husband and I we decided to move across the country from California to Massachusetts, and so I was like, oh my god, that is a huge move. I never lived in Massachusetts before, never lived in East Coast before, and didn't know anyone except my in-laws. And so I was like, okay, this is going to be a good adventure. But it was not that easy. It was very challenging. But and then it shaped my personality a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the way I look at things, the way I deal with things. I was not like, oh my God, I couldn't do this. I was like, if I can handle this move, I can handle other things. So
Mm-hmm. And I think that's super important because in life, a very valuable skill is to be resilient. And sometimes you're put in situations like that. And then other times, that's another thing I'd recommend, which is when you're early in your career, take the risk. Do the, if somebody, hey, we got this crazy thing that we need somebody to figure out and work on, raise your hand and say, I'll go do that. I'll take it on. Because that attitude of taking on risk and trying new things is going to benefit you throughout your entire career. Because now I'm 3 decades into my career. I learn something new every day. And so that mindset of being a continuous learner and constantly sort of advancing your skill set and being the best person you can be is, super important, super critical. And I think that just that concept of taking risks, being resilient, recognizing that risks don't always work out the way that you want it to, but you can learn from everything. And that's one of the things I tell my kids when they were in high school, which is, oh, I'm working at this fast food place and I don't like it and it's driving me crazy. I want to quit. And I'm like, okay, but before you do that, what did you learn from it? What were the things that you took away? Well, I learned about myself that I really don't like dealing with the public, or I do like dealing with the public, or I don't like doing the same thing over and over again repetitively. And that's so important to learn about yourself, because Rosie, your situation works great for you, but that would be terrible for somebody else. And that's so important for people to learn enough about themselves so they can make those decisions and figure out, how they can create the best life for themselves possible as a result of those decisions.
I agree, Dave. That's so true.